Hello, and welcome to the Social Power Lab podcast, brought to you by Vokes Leadership Group.
Well, hello everyone. It is that time again where you get to hear us talk. And I'm assuming you want to because you came here.
You're here. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
evidence.
I mean, I've already been talking a lot today. So, yeah, it's everyone's favorite thick French boy, Adrian Deschamps the second, coming at you with Dr. Ted Vokes, Jedi Master Extraordinaire. And we both had a pretty long day. But you know what? This isn't even work at this point. So I mean, we're here to talk more about organizations of self today, which is really cool psychology. And actually, you know, it was one of the fun. Well, I mean, everything was fun, but in when I was a wee undergrad in Ted's social psychology class, it was one of those concepts that like I knew about, obviously, but like I didn't have the words for it, right? Like I knew that I acted, not acted, I knew that I stepped into a different role depending on what I was doing, right? So, I mean, you know, at that point in my life, I was doing MMA. So I had like my MMA organization of self. I was still a musician, still am, had my musician organization of self, had my student organization of self, right? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking today is this theory of organizations of selves. But I'll let the doctor kind of explain it in the doctor way, if you will.
Yeah, this is what we consider a fill in the gap um, concept. And it's, you're not going to find it in the textbooks. You're only going to find it here until we get it more popularized. But it fills the gap between personality and culture. And that's a big gap. Right? We know that culture influences us. We know that personality profoundly influences us. What's that space in between? And you, Adrian, you just said it, your mixed martial arts organizations of self, which I never saw when you were doing my social psych class. I saw various versions of, undergrad Adrian, in that class. And of course, he stood out.
Well,
Had he not, had he been a wallflower, we wouldn't be doing this podcast together, but he was a presence in the room.
I feel like I stood out in a really negative way, though. I just because I didn't.
No.
Well, no, because I didn't write notes in university,
Well,
right? I remember kind of sitting there with my feet up on the chair in front of me, not writing notes when everybody was furiously writing notes around me. And I don't know if that I mean again, I didn't like actually formally meet you at that time. So I wonder if that was like a thing that came off odd. I know it came off odd to other professors I had, but
well, I think by social psych, you'd already been in, and did you do intro
no,
with me?
no,
It was two,
that
no,
was the first
that
thing.
was the first time, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, you stood out for sure. You and Michael up there. Um, but yeah, that was fun.
That
Um,
was and yeah, lots of cool examples that I'm sure we're gonna run through today.
I guess we are. Yeah. Yeah. So this idea that we are different versions of ourselves in the different, I don't want to just say roles. Role is part of it, but it's much more than that. And it's not just a mood, it's much more than that. In fact, you could have a mood that is inconsistent with the organization of self that you need to be in. For, I'm not in the mood to work today, or I'm not in the mood to write an essay today, or I'm not in the mood to, whatever I'm going into um, something like my professorial organizations of self, as I use those examples. And it's bigger than that because it tracks, there we go, tracks with what you can remember in a particular organization of self versus what you're dampening down. Um, it can be very hard to remember things that you have easy access to in one organization of self when you're in a very different organization of self. And, you can be in a mood let's say, to be an organization of self that that you can't be in that moment. So I'm really in the mood to get into my kayak, but it's February. It's not right now, but that I feel like going kayaking, but the conditions are not right for it. You can't kayak on a ice covered river. So we can be in a space to be a particular version of ourselves and it be denied to us for practical or whatever reasons, or we can need to be in an organization of self, my working organization of self, and we're just not really into it in the moment. Well, there's other times it's like, man, I love my job. Yeah, this is cool. So mood isn't it, role isn't quite it, um, but we all play different roles, formal and informal, um, and we have to craft organizations of self that allow us to successfully negotiate the various social spaces. And when we say social spaces, we mean particular people in our space and that we're in their space, and that's a particular organization of self. Or even, when I'm introverting and comfortable in it, that is an organization of self as well. It's not performative or in relation to anybody else in that moment. It's fact, it's me not in relation to anybody else in those moments. Um, so what are all the aspects of organizations of self? Do you want to riff on some of that there, Adrian?
I mean, I can, yeah. It's kind of cool. Like as you were saying that, I was almost thinking about like extensions of personality, right?
Yeah.
And the thing with organizations itself, it can be really fun. It can be really fun when we have like a workbook with different activities and stuff, and like there's this organization of self activity where you kind of do like a giant web of your organizations of self, and it's really fun when you have them all down on paper and you look at the different aspects, right, of what you touch on, and it all starts with your core personality, right? It's all
Yeah.
starts with your core self and then extends from there. You know, for example, Uncle Adrian is a total pushover, right? Professor Adrian was not.
Yeah.
Um, Podcast Adrian is, I mean, you all have to suffer through that. So, it's just it's really cool, and everybody has these extensions, right?
Yeah.
And
Expressions, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
expressions, and we use power differently through them, which is, kind of the main thing here that we're looking at. And Uncle Adrian, because I'm only an uncle to two little ones as of now, and he's a pushover because those little ones have immense referent power over me, like immense. Like, I get commands, pick me up, sit here, and like I go sit exactly where she points. Like, it's really funny. And yeah, so I mean, you use different types forms of power fluidly, but also like you have power styles that you really implement more depending on your role, right? And
Yeah.
that's, like with, I mean, I told this story 100 times already, but like, you know, undergrad Dr. Vokes was like that was a thing, right? Like it was like, second year university, and there was an organization of self that you brought into the classroom, and then I had an organization of self that I was in when I would like email you, right?
Hmm.
Very very formal student kind of thing. And then, you know, you invited me to a career workshop after the course was done, and then it was different organizations of self. So it's just, yeah, a lot to dig into.
Yeah. And again, I had to force you into a fourth year practicum course um, that
Of
you
course.
didn't apply for, and I'm like, why aren't you in this course? And it was a difficult course to get in. It wasn't just sign up for. You had to interview twice to get in, but I already figured you out, and because I ran that course for like 12 students a semester, it was like, Adrian, you need to be in this course. And then he you know, he I will say this because he won't. He got the highest grade ever awarded in the, oh God, 20 years of that course that it ran. It was a capstone course for fourth year students, and again, hard to get into. And then he gets the, you can I tell the mark?
I mean, you're going to regardless.
I, yeah, he
I'm
got,
just going to stare at the ground.
yeah, you do that. And I want to point out that I only assigned about a third of the grade. It was made up of me, the GA's assessment of your weekly journal entries and interviews with the GA, and then it was the placement organization that signed the rest. So yeah, he got 98% in that course. And yeah, I didn't ever give out. You got a lot of top marks because they were really good students that got in. If any of you are listening, if you got into the practicum course, you were doing real well, and because it was hard to get in. But yeah, it was, and he rocked it. He rocked it in the organization that he was placed in. So that was an organization of self that you were discovering being an undergrad and then
It
actually
was.
being put into a mental health agency and interacting with clients. It was incredible.
And that was the crafting of a practitioner organization itself, right? Like it was
Yep.
almost like the organization was great, like hands down. There was so much opportunity there. There was lots of like awesome clients to connect with, and we were given a lot of autonomy, right? So given that autonomy, in that experience, I was kind of like, okay, what am I doing with this? Like
Yeah.
it was very much like, here I am, undergrad student. I've done placements before at that place, but it was, or not that place, sorry, placements before in my education, but it was more based on my, my special needs, special education worker career, right? So this was a bit different. And yeah, crafting that organization itself was like a very intensive 120 hours. Like it was just like, how am I going to respond to this? How do I want to portray myself in this context, right?
Yeah.
And that's what was so great about the supervision sessions was like all of us were really kind of figuring out uh, our roles and our specific, I don't want to say conflicts, but like our areas that we wanted to grow, because these weren't easy placements. I mean, like you were
No.
put to work, right? And
Yeah. You
you
weren't just shadowing somebody. You had responsibilities.
yeah, like I actually told a story earlier today about a mistake I made at that placement to paint a point in what I was teaching today. So like it's still like I still carry it with me.
Yeah.
Um and it was, yeah, so it was a lot. I mean, it was a good crafting of the organization itself, and it was fun
And
too because I was learning about the theory while like implementing the theory, and
yeah.
yeah.
And you were in any social setting, you're having to discover what your power is, right? So what were the limits? Because I mean, we can say this is at Mental Health Connections, amazing program in Windsor. I hope that it's duplicated in many other communities because it's such a powerful and important service. And we would place just a handful of students every year in that particular program. There were others that we placed students in as well. And they do 120 hours, like Adrian said. And so that it wasn't an inconsequential amount of time to explore yourself and to deliver something of meaning to the clients there. So yeah, I saw a lot of students really come into their own in that environment, but there were clear boundaries too and clear limits. There was some forms of power you just have to go get a clinical social worker for, you know, and they weren't having you do therapy. That wasn't the purpose of it at all. But if somebody was in a mental health crisis, they told you how to sit with them and be with them, and to bring in somebody who was a clinical social worker. So It was about finding your power, which
Yeah. And it was really, yeah, like still it's a core experience I reflect on regularly, right? And even during like really rough days where like, as humans we naturally, question ourselves and we,
Mhm.
go through our own song and dance during the hard times that come with this career path. Like I still go back and I read the journal entries from that time in my life. Um, because yeah, it's almost like I need that person from the past, that organization of self, to remind me, you know, of the road that was taken. Not to sound like
Right.
super corny. I almost just sound like a damn Bob Seger song right there. Right? The road I was taking.
Okay.
Never got into Bob Seger. I mean, it was
I didn't either, strangely. It was like, I should like this, but I just didn't. I don't know. Yeah, music, brilliant stuff, but it's limbic. It's not prefrontal. You don't logically like music, although you can make arguments as to why you like music yourself. But try to reason this. I love strawberries. I love raspberries. I like raspberries more. And there's dozens of people in the world, thousands of people who wouldn't eat a raspberry if their life depended on it. Why do I like raspberries a little bit more than strawberries? There's no logical reason.
I
Just
I I agree with you
biology.
on that.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Yeah, strawberries I find are very overrated,
Mm,
but
yeah.
raspberries are great. But then blueberries conquer all. So,
Well, and I have put blueberries right up there too, but I'd sort of do raspberry, blueberry, strawberry in that
ooh,
order, right? And other people will disagree. And
you
the
are
the point is,
absolute savage.
this is and even a ranking comes from a prefrontal experience, drawing on, oh man, there's raspberries. Yeah, I'm in, man, um, and so we can't make sense of much of the psyche from a purely reasoned or logical sense, um, right? Sexuality, you don't choose your sexuality, your turn-ons, your turn-offs, and things like that. They can be shaped by experience for sure, but it's not like, you know, um, well, I woke up one day and decided to like X in terms of, oh, and I chose X for uh, sexuality, right? But no, we don't. It's limbic. It's very, you know, survival based in most respects, and it's like, trying to say, why are you into expressing yourself sexually in one way and not in another way? It's like saying, why do I like raspberries more than I like strawberries? It's
Mhm.
there's no logical reason that would ultimately logically make sense, if you will.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
right? It's no, raspberries taste better to me. That's, I
mhm.
could say, well, I've eaten fewer raspberries, and maybe that's true, but it's not, because I kind of, I'm the guy that, mommy and daddy raspberries threaten their little baby raspberries with, oh, look out, because you'll get eaten if you don't go to bed, by this big guy who devours raspberries wherever he goes. That was a strange example.
That was,
Uh,
hey, yeah, dude. That was like, I don't know.
we seem to do a lot of our shows when it's like end of day and we're kind of punch drunk.
Yeah,
Because
it's
you know, yeah.
it's
Anyway,
also one of the
uh,
best times. Um, yeah, so besides scaring raspberry kids to bed,
yeah,
um there's
that could
uh
be my dumbest analogy ever. Okay,
I
but
I'm not gonna let you live that one down.
well, listen, I'm still got to get you for last week, because you gave me a really good burn there, and I'm just biding my time. I'm waiting. And
Wait
if you
so
don't know what I'm talking about, you're gonna have to go back and listen to that episode.
yeah,
But
gonna
you
have
want to
to
see, yeah, it was a moment. Score one, Adrian. That was
sort
it.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And
back to power. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna talk about actually, and this is related, but We also have organizations of self that we don't like,
Yes.
which I think is a really important thing. And it has to do with using powers in ways that we do not like to, right?
Ego dystonic.
Ego dystonic. And I think actually, you know what? Like you have a really good example of an
I'll
organization
share
self,
that one.
if
Yeah,
you're cool
because
with that, yeah.
when we train in this, I've drawn out my organizations of self, and we have a methodology so you can do it. You start with sort of the roles that you perform, but then there's multiple organizations of. You don't have just one organization of self when you interact with your father or your mother or your romantic partner. You have multiple, but you know when I was in the military and I was the big bad for this leadership school, um, I really only presented to the course candidates, one intimidating power structure of a captain who could determine if you were going to be recoursed or not, or RTU'd, return to unit or not. Um, so they would not have seen my playful self. They wouldn't have seen this version of me. I wasn't this version of me yet. I wasn't a psychologist then. I was training to be one, but I wasn't one. And so we approach the different roles that we perform with a different organization of self, and somebody else could enact the role of captain in a leadership school very differently than I chose to do that. There would still be some parameters and expectations because, the military has some certain clear cut expectations, but, you enact your role differently according to what's ego syntonic and ego dystonic. I It would have been ego dystonic for me to behave when I was raising my son as a single dad, like I was as Captain Folks. That would have not, and I did see people in the military try to raise their children as though they were, you know, recruits in the Canadian Forces. Um, and I was like, no, that won't be me. And then sure enough, it wasn't me. Um, so we use these power schemas differently. Now, back to your point, Adrian, an organization of self that is in my diagram of all of my various ones. And your diagram of your organizations of self, if you ever do it, is going to evolve for the entire lifespan that you're on the planet. It's only finished the day you exit the planet, as a living hominid. Um, and not all the organizations of self, like Adrian has just said, are ego syntonic. I realized in probably early high school, maybe even late elementary school, that I'm intensely competitive. Like, and I do not like that version of Ted that emerges when I compete. And other people are at their best. I'm not anti-competition. I am the experience of being in my body and my competitive streak gets engaged. I don't like how I would be inclined to use power in those situations. And so I think I was like 14, and I was playing football um, in a really good league, and I held my own, and I was like team captain and such, and I was fine doing that, but I could have that competitive thing striking a nerve, and then I would become a version of Ted that I did not like to be. It felt yuck. I don't like this person that emerges. I don't like how, he thinks. Um, and so I decided I'm only going to compete by myself. I can do that. I'm good with that. And I have worked, it's still there, but I've worked to not be engaged in a competitive way. And Adrian would tell you this too, because we hang out socially a lot. And he'll never see me actually play a game. I'll watch people play
Yeah,
a game,
it's wild.
right?
Like, and again, I play tons of board games. Brent plays tons of games. Like, and Ted's always is like, I'll just sit back, I'll watch, and he has a great time. And
I
it's
love
just
it.
it's
I
one of
love
those
watching you
things
guys
where
play.
like I've had to, train my partner to be like, yeah, no, he's just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like she's like, do you think that Ted will like this game? Do you think that Ted will try this game? And I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a psychological reason behind it, which is really cool. And yeah, organizations of self that I don't like is I don't like my hopeless organization of self. That's one that really gets to me. I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah.
when I've had, a long day of dealing with like the heavier stuff that you deal with when you work in the field of psychology.
Yeah.
And, depending on where I'm at and my life situations, whatever, I can feel very like discouraged about humanity. And I think that's a very common theme for a lot of people who are in, helping professions. Um, and yeah,
Well,
that's
and hopeless means also powerless, right? You get that
yes.
sense of
I think
I don't
that's
have.
that's a
Yeah.
great point. Yeah, I think that's more what it is when I feel like I don't have the answer, right? Or when I feel like I don't
Course
have
of action.
a course of action or the ability to influence anything for a
Yeah.
better outcome, right?
Yeah.
And that's
And I'm going to interrupt you here because
yeah.
Adrian is somebody that people naturally orient towards when there's a problem, right? Like they default
Oh yeah, they
to
do.
you, right? And that's actually people give reality shaping power to you very readily because you tend to be very calm, cool, and collected in very tense situations, which we all have to be in our line of work too. Um, but you know, he's gonna if he doesn't have the answer, he's gonna find one. Right? That's the thing, and so a lot of your identity, and let's go to identity quickly.
Hmm.
Your identity is the sum total of all of your organizations of self.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. That's what your identity really is. And of course our identity changes over time. It's not our personality, it's our and so, you know, and it's even the non-activated organizations of self. I've been out in the military for a long time, but those organizations of self are still very much part of how I, you know, understand myself,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and So, yeah, if you want to know your full identity, draw out your organizations of self and know that you'll create more as you're going through life. Know that you're going to have to create some that you may not want to. You know, I got rear-ended by a bus when I was a grad student, and I had to learn to be. I'd really been fortunate. I'd, you know, minor injuries throughout life. I'd never had to deal with, you know, uh, trauma to the body. I didn't get PTSD from that. I could still drive after I wasn't I was a passenger in the car, but I wasn't terrified of driving anymore. But just defining myself as somebody who can't do a lot of things that I'm used to doing, because like 3 cracked vertebrae and a dislocated jaw, and you know, if you get rear-ended by a bus, it's going to win, right? It really is. It's no contest if you're in a compact car, which was even more compact after the bus hit us.
Oh Lord.
Uh, yeah, we couldn't even get the doors open. Like it would literally, because it had compacted the vehicle so much. And
Yeah. Damn.
so, but yes, to that point, I had to learn to be dependent, more dependent than I wanted to be. You know, so many medical appointments, so many, you know, recovery or rehabilitation stuff that I had to go through. And then I had to define myself as not graduating when I had planned to graduate with my PhD, because that slowed things up by a good 3 years. Um, you know, I would continue to do the work I could, but yeah, buses win. Um, so if you ever say I know what it's like to you know be or I feel like I was hit by a bus, I actually do know what I was in a vehicle, wasn't you know
Well,
wasn't
I
driving.
mean,
You know
it's a pretty fair
the
situation. And
The seat that I was sitting in, I was in the passenger seat, broke right off of the floor of the vehicle.
Jesus.
You know, yeah, it was not there was no salvaging the vehicle after that. It was done.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, and so that was an imposed organization of self. I had to learn to recover. I had to reclaim an identity that hey, I'm going to be, I'm going to have a PhD in a year. Nope. No, you're not. And it pulled back the time frame, and so that's an adjustment to an imposed set of circumstances that and so adjustment. I used to teach a course, adjustment of personality. That's organizations of self come up to help us adjust to the things that happen to us.
Mm,
I had a friend in grad school who's, both his parents passed away of unrelated conditions within like 9 months of each other. And he was, 28, and he didn't see that coming.
yeah.
Right. And people could say, well, you're 28, you're an adult. Well, yeah, but he said, yeah, I'm an adult, but I'm an orphan. I did not see that coming. Right. And that's rough on you at any point. It's always hard to
Yeah.
lose a parent, and yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and that too, I've lost part of my network, an important part.
Hmm.
Right, he was close to his parents, so he had positive reference power with them. They had networks, and so in becoming an orphan, as he defined himself, not in a pathetic way, by the way, it was just a reflection on, wow, this is I don't have somebody to call, other than his girlfriend, to say, "Hey, this great thing happened to me today, and I just wanted to share it with you." Right?
Mm,
He couldn't express that those organizations of self, and when we do talk about when in the training on organizations of self, if you lose somebody who matters to you in your life, you can never be those particular organizations of self again.
mhm.
Right. People will say, my parent passed away and I feel like a part of me died too. That's not metaphor, because those organizations of self that you could be with that person, you can remember. I remember what it was like to interact with my dad with great fondness and affection, but I can never be, you know, Murray Vokes' son again, other than on paper, sort of thing, right? There's a
Yeah.
family lineage, but I can't, I can't enact those things with him that I cherish and I loved. And on the other side, when my infamous grandmother, who was dark on probably at least three of the four dark traits. I don't know that she was psychopathic, but definitely narcissistic, sadistic, and Machiavellian. When she passed away, people did not have to be the organizations of self, my dad, my mom, my aunts and uncles, that they needed to protect themselves from her attacks. Shields up, mother's coming. And of course, she insisted on be calling mother, mom, or anything of endearment or affection. Everybody had to call her mother. Um, and So it was insisted upon by her. It's about power, of course. And when she passed away, people just went about the funeral, and there wasn't a tear shed that I could tell. Um, and so, yeah, I don't have to be these organizations of self anymore because she's gone. And
Hmm.
that's, maybe a sad statement, but when you're talking about people with dark traits, that's liberation, you know?
I mean, part of psychology is just talking about the reality of things, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
um and before we continue talking about the reality of things, we're going to take a break here, and we will be right back with more things to come your way to think about. So, be right back.
This week's spotlight is on workplace surveys. If you're ready to move past anecdote and politics to real data, Voke's Leadership Group designs custom workplace surveys tailored to your specific goals and needs. From leadership and culture diagnostics to needs assessments and engagement surveys, our team helps you interpret the data through a social power lens, so your next move will be informed, strategic, and defensible. Thank you, and now back to today's episode.
Welcome back to the show where Ted tells you stories about his grandma, and you know what? Actually, people that I know that have seen you present, that was one of their favorite shocking stories that came out of you, because they're like, yeah, and he just started talking about his grandma, this wild story, and I'm like, yeah, that's a thing. Um, And yeah, but that's a really good point. And you know what? I feel like we made that connection um about grieving organizations itself. I feel like that happened during COVID, right?
Yeah,
That
we
was
yeah,
like we were texting back and forth, and because at the time we were trying to, like, obviously everyone and their third cousin went into crisis when COVID hit. So, we were trying to like provide resources to clients to try to get like a pulse on what type of training we could develop that could possibly help, right? And we were just kind of exploring like what are people feeling, right? And we landed on fear, ambiguity, uncertainty, anxiety, grief, and awe,
yes,
right? All of
yes,
those things together, because it was a lot. Obviously we were afraid, right? There were
yeah,
the difference between fear and anxiety based on the literature is that fear is like concrete things that you know to be afraid of, right? Like, this is a virus, people are dying, right? I am
mhm,
afraid of that. Anxiety is more the what if kind of scenarios, the potential of something, but it's not for certain, right? And then ambiguity and uncertainty is, just really not being able to pinpoint or really predict any type of outcome. But then the two really unique ones that we talked about was awe and grief, right? And awe, based on David Keltner's research, is, when you feel so small in relation to something else. Like you feel um there's a vastness, right?
yeah,
There's I think his operational definition is, vastness and the need to accommodate our current way of thinking to fit the new event or situation
the
that you're
reality,
that
yeah,
you're in awe of, right? So that was a really wild one too. And in that same text conversation, we talked about grieving, right? And it wasn't so much like, I mean, people were losing people, absolutely. But there
yeah,
was also other types of grief at play, right? People were losing their careers. Lots of people got laid off. People were getting divorced. People were, if families were kind of widespread across the country or across the globe, they were missing like years of their kids' lives, right?
yeah,
And those were things that people were grieving. I'll never forget like when my big French family got together after the pandemic. My cousins that were like little youngins when it hit were like all the way through puberty and now teenagers showing up with boyfriends and girlfriends, and I'm like, what is happening right now, right? Like
yeah,
they were as tall as me. They went from like, little kids that I was like, throwing over my shoulder and goofing around with to being like, yeah, like high schoolers, sneaking
and
cigarettes like I was, like, just ridiculous. I was like, no, what? Like, COVID really, really took that away from me. To see
yeah,
that other development, right? But other people had so much, yeah, like so many things that they lost, right? In addition to their loved ones that they did, lose through death. There was so many aspects of our lives that we lost, and those were organizations of self, right?
yes,
At the time I was working a few different jobs, and I lost one of those jobs, right? Like that was a thing that I was like, oh my god, like what the hell, right? Yeah, so that was an interesting one.
I
Absolutely.
remember a CEO we were working with who, and of course, you remember when we look back on COVID, you're looking at it. you know, as a past event, and how it came out. But that uncertainty and that ambiguity was rampant when we're going into it, and even midway through, and how long will this go on and stuff. And this CEO shared in a training session, which is really helpful for all of the people, his executive team that he was leading, and saying, as we were bringing up the grief, and he said, I'm grieving playing hockey badly. And it was like, okay, tell us about that, right? And he says, well, once a week I go out with a bunch of other men and I play hockey badly. I'm no good. I'm probably the worst person on the team, but but I love it, and they don't care that I suck because they're not really that good anyway. The point is, I get to be my hockey player organization of self, and I don't know when I'll be able to do that next. And so I'm grieving the loss of that expression of me. Um, you know, and I'm grieving what happened afterwards, because he had the keys to the club, and he would open up the bar after the game, sort of thing, right? And so it was playing hockey badly and then having a good old drunk up after that. And so we were grieving the loss of those, and losses of expressions of power as well. A loss of organizations of self where I can go in and feel competent, right? Exercising my expert power. Having people come to me for information, because they would do that. They drop in my office when we're all physically in the same spot. But now, because we're only on Zoom calls, they don't do that so much. Um, and so there was all kinds of loss that was being experienced, even though, and I remember he's still a client of ours, is still talking, and he talks, and he said, yeah, I'm back to playing hockey badly, and I'm loving it, again. So it wasn't even that he's drawing on expert power. I think his power was keys to the bar, that he could open up for everybody at the end of this. And I forget all the details of how that worked, but he had the keys. So that was his legitimate power, to hang on to the keys and say when the bar opened and when it didn't, I suppose. Which, once the game was over, it was open. But so we grieved those things. You grieve time with your family and seeing some of your cousins growing through those stages. You
Yeah.
see the outcome, but you didn't get to see the process,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It was what
And
I'm
yeah,
still not used to it. Like I'm still. It's funny. Like
mm,
if you were to say their names to me, I still picture the child versions of them, right? Even
the
though they're.
pre-pandemic.
Oh
Yeah,
my god, one of them's 20. Oh my god. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's yeah. So it's really funny.
yeah.
Um and yeah. And I also feel like another cool thing about organizations of self is it's can be a very motivating concept too, because there can be organizations of self that you want to become, right? And that's something really cool that I've been personally using right now. So I've been on a pretty like heavy workout weight loss journey, and I am 64 pounds down now. So those who have
You
never,
ah,
yeah, those who have never met me, I'm a big dude. So yeah, so it was, and it's the whole idea is this organization of self that I want to be, right? Like I want to be the person that, travels to Europe and just has the energy to walk and explore until I drop. And I don't want that to be within 25 minutes. Right? Like I wanna just, yeah, like be mobile and energetic and healthy to do these things, right? And to be excited about things rather than kind of, as a bigger person, those who might be struggling with their weight can empathize. Like you kind of have to worry about things, right? Like when you go to certain places, you're like, what's the seating going to be like? Am I going to be able to fit in this seat? Or, how much walking is going to be happening in this activity? Will I be able to keep up with everybody, right? Like these are things that, as a bigger person you worry about, which I've learned, obviously. Um, and those are starting to go away, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting.
Yep.
Like I was, you know, walking around for 2 hours yesterday and I was like, wow, I feel great. Like I can keep going, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Oh
yes,
yeah.
it's almost like this new organization of self is emerging. Um, and for
Well, it's
me,
aspirational too,
yeah,
right?
and that's
It's
kind
a
of a,
future version of me that I'm working towards, and
yeah.
you're realizing it. And yeah,
And it's
brilliant.
it's it's really cool, right? And then with that mindset, I'm trying to also bring bring about my violinist organization of self as and what I want to create, because now I'm into this concept of creating organizations of self, right?
Yeah.
And it's not so much about just doing the thing, right? Like that's the thing. It's not just like, oh, lose weight, oh, start practicing this. It's like, no, become the person, make it a part of yourself, right? Like, there is a part of me that has always wanted to be a violinist, and violin players, please, you know, I need your support. Okay. I don't know who made this instrument, but I need to have words with them. Okay, this like, and I'm somebody that I play a little bit of instruments, and they're like, everything about a violin is unnatural. Everything about it is unnatural. How you hold it, you gotta hold it between your chin and your shoulder, and your neck is turned, and then like the way that your hand works on the, I can't even call it a fretboard because there's no frets on it. It's like your hands twisted, and then the way that you hold the bow, you gotta hold it, and it feels like you're gonna drop it. Like there is just nothing natural about this instrument. So if anybody can help ease my grievance with this thing, um please help me out. But the thing that kills me is that it's my favorite instrument. Like when I hear pieces of music with violin, I'm like, oh my god, I want to be able to do that so badly, right? But it's not the concept of being able to do it, right? As humans, we're like, I want to be the person that does that, right? And that's kind of what I think is so powerful about organizations of self. So, um, yeah,
And that would bring you a greater degree of expert power because he's for those of you who are listening,
oh
he is
God,
actually incredibly gifted as a musician and can play many instruments. And he plays all of the music on our theme. He composed that. It sounds like a small string quartet or something, but it's all Adrian. And so incredibly gifted. And I can say this as somebody who really did try to become a musician. I had an aspirational organization of self that I could learn to play the guitar and that kind of thing. And I really gave it a really good shot. Um, and about 18 months into the process with a really good guitar teacher, I was murdering yet another song as I was sitting there in front of him, and I stopped in mid-song and looked at him and said, "I'm never going to be very good at this, am I?" And he looked at me straight in the eye. He said, "No." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And I paid, and I donated him a guitar. I really tried. It was an aspirational organization of self, and I'm really okay because I got Adrian in the world and other gifted musicians who I can appreciate their music and go, yeah, no, I tried it. I'm not musically gifted. It was murder for me to try to read music, and it's just not how my brain works. So, it's an organization of stuff I tried to achieve. I did not, and for me too, plunking away like I was not satisfying. I wanted mastery. I wanted to be maybe not the greatest guitar player ever, but I wanted to be able to hold my own, right? And really, and so I found out I I don't have the dexterity for it. I saw such minimal incremental changes as I really tried to practice hard and all, and it just didn't. It wasn't, an organization of self that I was going to achieve, and I was okay to let it go because I really tried it. Versus somebody who was like, oh, I could have, but I never tried. Oh, I could have. I really think I could have done. And that could be an aspirational organization of self that plagues somebody. That I had to take care of my parents, so I couldn't go off and do X in life, and I wanted to be that, and I couldn't be. And so those unrealized or desired organizations of self don't bring the power that we were looking to have by that. I wanted the ability to entertain people, to sit around a fire and play guitars and pick up a song, and all of it. I had this image of what Ted might look like if I could do this, and my fingers just weren't, and my brain just weren't. We're not going to deliver on that, and so yes,
I still
this.
have very strong opinions about this.
I know Adrian promises that if I just learned with the right person, and
I
I'm.
I think that teacher. I'm sorry if you spend 18 months with the person, and
Mhm.
then you said I'm not going to be good at this, and then this guy validates it and goes, "Yeah, even though you spent it." Nope, I'm sorry. Nope. Listen, next time we have a bonfire, okay, you know what? Me and Shane are bringing a guitar over, and
Uh-huh.
I, I'm sorry, we're nipping this in the bud. Okay, so stay tuned because we're gonna have a guitar talk about Ted and developing this
his
organization
his
itself.
musical intelligence, yeah,
Because I
yeah.
don't even want that organization itself to come into this. I want
Uh-huh.
I want a new one out of you.
Okay.
Um,
Well, and I mean, but this is a great example, a real one. We didn't plan this, of people urging somebody to become an organization of self that they aren't currently,
oh
you
yeah.
know, right? Oh, you really could. You'd be incredible if you played basketball, or you'd be, or whatever. I haven't really, you know, and so we do this. We're inviting people to explore other organizations of self because we see some nascent talent or ability. I mean, oh, you were told this, Adrian. You got to be in mental health, man, because you're just so empathetic, and you're just there for people, and your presence and whatnot. And here you are, you've done in psychology, and you're applying it in so many different important ways. Um, so sometimes we go with what people tell us.
Mhm.
Um, I was told I had to become an architect by my drafting teacher in high school. You've got to become an architect, right? You're amazing. You're incredible at this. And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, it helps me with my GPA so I can get to the university I want to go to, but I have no interest in buildings whatsoever. Like somebody else had the aspiration for me. I did not share it.
Yeah, that's interesting how that comes about. Yeah, there's so many people that, or even people that are like born into things or born around things, right? Where it's like, oh, like this is one thing that I said, and this has a point with, aspiration based organizations itself, is, if and when I have kids, like I literally am just going to support what they do and want to do, right? Like, and I'm fortunate, I got to try things, right? I got to try hockey, I got to try lacrosse, I got to try, right? But my parents wanted me to be a hockey player of sort, or a plumber, or like, right? And when I have a kid, like I'm not gonna like hope they become a musician or something. If they choose to, all the tools are there, right?
Yeah.
Um, physically, I mean, like I have a lot of stuff. I have guitars on my wall, and yes. But like, if they just decide, like, you know what, I just really want to do some tennis, I'm gonna try to support that full force and help them develop that organization to self. Um, and yeah, I feel like that's a lot of what should be done. But it also, it doesn't hurt to just even point out to somebody something that they're good at, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe it can spark that interest. Maybe it it doesn't, right?
Hmm.
You know, my
Yeah.
partner was told that she should really go do her PhD, right? Like, and again, she would have thrived at it, absolutely, but you know, she wanted to get her master's of social work and be a clinical social worker. Like that's what she wanted, right? She didn't want to do research. She didn't want to write dissertations and publish yearly, and right, like she had no desire for that. But then if when people saw her intelligence and saw what she was capable of, they're like, oh my god, you can go all the way, right? But she didn't want to, right? And that's cool because that's who she is. um Random, did I tell you I started learning French? This is like super random. Despite my French jokes all the time. I'm very French, but I don't speak French. My Pip was the last French speaker in my family who passed away. And I went to a conference last week in Ottawa, and people from all over the country were there. And somebody started speaking to me in French, right? And I, you know, had to go, oh, like I'm sorry, I don't speak French. And they were so fun. They were so nice about it, and it was really funny. Um, because when I say it, it almost sounds bad, but it was really funny. They're like, they looked at me and they just smirked, and they're like, "Do you know?" They were from Quebec. They're like, "Do you know how French your name is?"
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, like I do, and they're like, no, like your name is more French than people who live in Quebec. Like, like you got the French's name, dude.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, you know what, point taken, fair. And so anyways, I started to craft a new organization of self of learning French, and
Yes.
Me and Duolingo had a date every night for 6 days straight now. I got a streak. Um, but see, what's really cool about this is that other old, long gone organizations of self are coming back. Like I'm talking like my 10-year-old self in grade school that knew how to conjugate verbs in French is reemerging,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm like, oh my God, okay, so tu es means you are, tu as means you have, you know. Um, it's just je suis is I am, j'ai is I have, right? So, and then it's all coming back to me, right? Like you have your masculine nouns, your feminine nouns. So if I say, you know, I have a sister, right? I would say j'ai une sœur, right? But it's un, right? Goes in front of sister, right? But then if I was to say I have a brother, it would be un. Like, case in point, there's just these things reemerging in my brain that I have not connected with in
Forever.
decades,
Yeah.
right? And it's just so cool how it's coming back. And it's like, yeah, like it's almost like a new organization itself is being crafted out of a past
With
one, but
yes.
also with a new one, right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Anyway, I just had to share that. That was my.
No, exactly. And if you, get, well, it sounds like you're doing great with the French. You're increasing, your your expert power at that point. You can speak another language, um, and that allows you to shape other brains' realities through a different language. So you expanding your reality shaping power at that point, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I can swear fluently in both official languages, but my French is yeah, c'est terrible, and yeah, so uh, I but I had French um, personnel, and so you know we would designate, or we'd put a red dot in the name tag of anybody who was bilingual. And then, because it's two official languages, all orders had to be issued in both languages. But some people would get sloppy about that. And if they were unilingual, they would just issue them in that order and expect people to, but that was unacceptable. That was actually my first culture audit and culture change initiative was while I was in the military and all these French English conflicts. And here I am, a unilingual individual, and we still found very pragmatic ways to make sure that everybody in the unit was spoken to and issued orders in their first language. Um, and where did I go with that? It was about power, right? To be denied information because I don't speak a language is very isolating, and it's exclusion, right? Power. You don't matter enough for me to put my orders into a language you can understand. So that diminishes your value in your own experience, and that hits us in the self-esteem because power and self-esteem co-vary. Not the same thing, but they co-vary. So I used myself as the bad example who could still be successful because, all right, my French say terrible, right? I'm probably even saying that wrong. Um, and um, but okay, no orders will be issued that are not in both official languages. How do we do that? Well, there are bilingual people, whether they be staff or course candidates, um, and okay, you've got a red dot in your name tag. You're with me. I issue my order in English, and I pause, let them translate it, and then everybody is treated with the same, given the same information, right? And I extend my information power and my legitimate power to issue orders through the words of somebody else's ability, expert power that I don't possess. So yeah, that was a cool culture change because man, there was a lot of tension between, and there was no necessity for it. It was basically if I'm French, only getting French orders. If I'm English, I only give English orders. And there was lots of pressure, if you're bilingual, to stay true and loyal to your first language and only issue. This is not coming from the military. This was the culture of that particular unit when I was given responsibility for that unit as OIC. So yeah, it's all about power everywhere. All of this stuff is about power. And remember, organizations of self are not just power strategies or power schema, but in one organization of self, I use power very differently than I would in another organization of self. So, and I'm comfortable using it differently in those different contexts.
Tu es terrible à français.
Ah,
I probably said that wrong. I was just saying, you know, you are terrible at French, in like a question. I
yeah,
definitely didn't say that right. I didn't have
yeah.
the dialect of a question. I had the dialect of a statement. But anyway, that's really cool though. And
Well, learning,
it's
right?
yeah.
Learn, make some mistakes along the way. Aspirational organization of self, bilingual Adrian,
Yeah.
right?
Then I looked at Japanese and realized that there's three different systems that interplay. And I'm
Mm.
like, I got really intimidated really fast. So I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with French for now, and then
For now, yeah.
yeah, get fluent at it. Go to the motherland of Picardy, and yeah, it's
Love
go to
it.
the
Yeah.
motherland of Picardy in my new body that
There,
can explore it. There we go.
s-
That's
lots of aspirational organizations of
yeah.
self there. And look, that's how we grow, right? Um, we can have an organization of self, like I was saying, that can get imposed upon us. I get hit by a bus. I have to adjust. Today I very little residuals from it, so I don't need to draw on that. But that experience of being in constant pain, right? Versus I'd experienced pain before, I heard things before and all the rest, but being in constant pain that you're just barely able to manage is a psychology unto itself. And that awareness of that experience leads me to orient towards people that live with chronic pain differently from the live the forced lived experience of, you know, somebody who's coping with intense pain for that, you know, doesn't go away for very long periods of time. It's just barely managed kind of thing. So that transformed my psychology in many respects too. Um, I don't live with chronic pain, but I did, and that has shaped me too. That awareness. For the thing that surprised me was just being in pain is exhausting, right? You can be lying there in pain, and and because it keeps going, it is exhausting just to be in pain. You don't have to do anything but be in pain to be exhausted by it. And so that was a big surprise to me, you know, and maybe that's not other people's experience of it, but yeah, um, it just, I haven't got the energy for it. Why? Because the energy is going into just dealing with that pain.
Hmm.
Um, right. And, and then other organizations of self where, the pain that you might experience in another organization of self has more positive meaning, right? Where it's like, I remember being on on a confidence course, which is in civilian parlance is like an obstacle course. And you're going through it with your, with your section, which is 10 people. And it's long, it's grueling, it's brutal, it's muddy, it's all of the things that you see. And it hurts, but you're doing it with a positive ideal in mind, right? To master, to get better, to get stronger. So that pain, as much as it's tiring because you're exerting yourself, is a very different experience of that pain. Pain is very much define the meaning of it shapes the experience of it. And so that organization of self of being in the military and running a confidence course was all part and parcel of it. And I got to get better. I got to get better. And I'll take the pain. I'll I'll deal with the pain versus try to avoid it. So yeah.
Hmm.
And then, all right, I'm stronger for it. I have what forms of power do I have now? I have more ability to endure physically grueling activities, and that enables me to persevere, to continue, and to be able to do things that I couldn't do before. I had, developed that organization of self that was prepared to, go through, some pretty rigorous training. Um, yeah. So there you go. But a big part, a huge part, inseparable part of organizations of self are the available forms of power you have and how you exercise them. Um, and if you've ever had one boss in a job and then that boss moves on and you get another boss in the job, you will note that they do not use their power the same way, right? That this boss, approached the job this way, this boss produced, and they, but you don't do it the way my last boss did because I'm not your last boss. I'm your now boss. And
Hmm.
here's how I'm going to exercise my power. And you might like it more, you might just find it different, or you might hate it. I don't like how this boss treats us. Well, when you say I don't like how this boss treats us, you're effectively saying I don't like the way they exercise the power in relation to us.
Hmm.
And and they don't respect my power, and I don't feel good about that. Um, our last boss would sit around and have a team meeting, and they would ask for our input. They would value our insights and our recommendations. They might not always make the final decision, but they would ask. This boss doesn't do that, right? It's when we have a meeting, it's only for the boss to talk. So same position, same legitimate power that would be ascribed. Um, and of course, with that will often come very different experiences of referent power. We really loved our old boss. We really hate this boss.
Hmm.
You so negative referent power in the latter case, positive referent power in the former case. And remember, positive referent power amplifies all the other forms of power in our minds, right? It's you're my boss, so I do what I'm told. You're my boss, who I like and respect, and who respects and likes me, positive referent power, and treats my abilities, my expert power on the team as valued and counting for something. So I I do what both of those bosses tell me to do, but the one that has the positive referent power, I go the extra mile for, right? I see things that I haven't been asked to do, but would probably contribute to a better outcome. So I'm taking them on. Whereas, if it's negative referent power, it's like, well, they didn't tell me to do it. You know, why should I care? I'm
Mhm.
going to withhold the exercise of my expert power that recognizes that these other steps would contribute to an even better outcome. I've done what I told, right? That's kind of a work to rule. I'm withholding some of my power in response to that boss's organization of self, which is, let's say, domineering and belittling and that sort of thing, right? So there's just an example of how positive referent power can produce an even better outcome than what you perhaps even envisioned or imagined. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, there
we
you go.
we have been braining away, and we're well past our
Our
hour.
cutoff,
So I mean,
are we? We
yeah,
better sign off, eh?
this was a great session though, and thank you all for listening.
If we do say so ourselves.
If we do say so ourselves, we're yeah. Yeah. Any closing comments?
Yeah, it would just say, you got questions about anything to do with social psychology. If we don't have the answers, we'll find them. We got an incredibly talented team, so I am very happy to go. We are in touch with Amir. He is providing us with some really exciting stuff we're going to bring into other episodes coming up. And I think we're going to talk about a whole episode on the organizations of self that you create to deal with anybody who has dark traits in your life. I think that's a whole episode in itself. I think that's where we're going to go next. Is what are the adaptive organizations of self that people create to cope or to survive or to get by in relation to somebody with dark traits? And and that would be and we coach people on how they have to create organizations of self that they don't necessarily want to be, but it's for you know mission critical tasks. When you have somebody on your team who has dark traits. So I think that's where we'll probably go next time. We do this for a living. We not podcasting, obviously. We do that as part of our living, but we do this in the workplace of all sorts and types. We I don't think we've said this enough. We don't have a sector that we work in at all. We basically say, if you got human beings in your workplace, we got psychology for it. So reach out with questions about what we talk about in the podcast, and reach out with other questions. We're out there. Link up with us on LinkedIn. We will never turn down somebody who genuinely wants to request to, link with us on LinkedIn. So there, and you can see what we do on our website. So there's my final plug. What do you got to add there, Adrian?
Damn. I just hope that everyone has a good night. And yeah, we're Vogue's Leadership Group. This is the Social Power Lab, and we will see you, beautiful people, next time.
Roger that.
Thank you for listening to the Social Power Lab podcast. Make sure you join us next week as we continue to uncover the hidden dynamics of social power all around us, because every conversation changes the world one interaction at a time. You can listen to the Social Power Lab podcast on YouTube under Social Power Lab _VLG, on Spotify under Social Power Lab, on Substack under Social Power Lab, and on Apple Podcast under Social Power Lab. Thank you and have a wonderful day. This podcast was produced by Trenton Vokes. The theme was produced and written by Adrian Deschamps.